Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Shant Kerbabian and this is Cases. Now, human trafficking is illegal sale of human beings as like commodities in order to meet demand for forced labor and commercial sexual slavery. Unfortunately, trafficking in humans is one of the most profitable and lucrative illegal industries of the world. Now, human trafficking statistics are alarmingly high and have even gone higher in the past decade, and especially in the Middle East. Now, women and children constitute a large proportion of the trafficking victims. This is again driven by the high demand of sexual exploitation and sex slavery in addition to cheap labor. Now, unrest in the Middle East has also promoted trafficking a great deal in that area. This is because women, children and men fleeing conflict areas find themselves turning to prostitution or forced labor, and a significant number of them are trafficked to other Middle Eastern countries for sexual exploitation. Now, the International Labour Organization estimates that in 2005, the global human trade industry made profits of over $31.6 billion. This is incentive enough to traffickers all over the world, and especially with the lack of the needed laws and actions on ground to stop this phenomenon. In today's episode, we discuss the issue of human trafficking in the Middle East, its causes and effects on society. And also we try to discuss solutions to this problem. And with me to discuss today's case is in the studio Ms. Diana Hariri, activist and General Coordinator of Human Rights Center at the Lebanese International University. And joining us via Skype from Beirut is Dr. Rita Chemaly, author and human rights activist. Now I would like to welcome my guest. Welcome.
Thank you.
But before we get to our discussion, we have a report. Let's check it out.
Trafficking in human beings is a global phenomenon of multidisciplinary nature. In one way or another, it affects all countries of the world, as it has become one of the most profitable activities of crime groups worldwide. Indeed, it is a crime and can take many different forms. It is dynamic and adaptable as many other forms of criminal activity. Human trafficking is constantly changing due to the social conditions, regional geopolitical context, and human aspects, which could defeat law enforcement efforts. Forms of exploitation include the exploitation of prostitution of others, sexual exploitation, forced labor, slavery and similar practices, servitude, and all related abuse. In 2005, Lebanon signed and ratified the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime and the Protocol to Prevent, Suppress, and Punish Trafficking in Persons, especially women and children, that supplement the convention. In Lebanon, the problem of trafficking in human beings needs to be seen in the cultural, socio-economic, and political context. A phenomenon finds its roots in the lack of equal opportunities and the human desire to improve one's personal quality of life and to escape mainly poverty. Accordingly, and with the number of Syrian refugees still increasing in Lebanon, the Lebanese Al-Akhbar newspaper published a report about the increase in the number of Lebanese marrying Syrian refugee girls. The report was published after the fatwas issued by Sunni clergy in Akkar, allowing this kind of marriages in order to protect refugee women and prevent them from taking on other means to ensure their livelihood. The report also reflects the point of view of Syrian women and girls who see in this marriage a way to cope with their present hardship, especially given the continuous crisis in Syria. As this problem is on the rise in Lebanon and the region, what ways and measures should be adopted to prevent this blatant increase in human trafficking?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Diana, let's get right into this issue. I mean, we're talking about a global phenomenon. We're talking about a phenomenon that has been going on for years. And people seem to not understand really the amount of horror caused by human trafficking. Now, can we talk about how big the problem is? Like, can you give us an overview of what are we talking about here when we say human trafficking?
Absolutely. First of all, as you define human trafficking, it's exploitive in nature. Therefore, and of course, in my opinion, I think that in general, all things that have to do with things that are under the table, they're not well communicated to our community. Mm-hmm. So if they're happening incognito, as you might call it, I don't think that there's enough awareness. I don't think people will know the severity of this exploitive nature, whether it's forced labor, forced stealing, forced prostitution. and other types of forced activities. So back to your question, I might add that yes, it is of severe nature, and I don't think that people are aware of this type of crime.
What is the reason people are not aware enough of this? Is it because there's a certain taboo revolves around this, or is it because it's dangerous to even tackle this issue?
Actually, because as I said, they're doing everything under the table, and so I don't think that in Lebanon they issued a law against human trafficking. I think it's in August 2011. But the problem is that none of the people they didn't even hear of cases, capturing people, getting punished for what they're doing. So it's just it's under the table. They're doing everything, and nobody's getting punished. Although they've amended the penal code somehow.
But when we say trafficking, we're talking about taking the human beings. I mean, the idea of it, the idea of taking a fellow human being, selling actually as a commodity, is horrific enough. But what has to be done to at least raise awareness among people? How can we let the people know? Where is media in all of this?
Well, actually, now here where the role of media comes into play. I think that the media is actually a perfect candidate to dramatize things. So I'd say part of a marketing campaign that an NGO could adopt is maybe dramatize some issues, create a video about how prostitution led to a girl's collapse or led to drug abuse and whatnot. These things, I think that the media plays a very important role.
But don't you think there's a dangerous point there, because you might end up with over-dramatizing a certain issue and eventually ending up using this case for certain political gains? Don't you think so?
Well, actually, I think maybe they need an expert on judging to what level is it dramatized enough for the public. So it can be controlled somehow. But this is part of marketing. It's a concept in marketing where you choose a certain concept, where you choose a certain idea that you want to market, and then choose the dramatizing aspect.
So I think
in order to appeal,
this has to be used in order to struck the people or shock the people.
Yeah, how about a movie? And capturing, human trafficking.
I'm sure there are a lot of documentaries
I know, exactly.
Documenting this.
But it's high time we communicate it to the public. So I know they're there, but they're just targeting certain markets.
Okay.
So how about we?
Allow me now to go to our guest via Skype, Dr. Rita Chemaly. Dr. Rita, welcome to Cases. Now, we were talking about the phenomenon of human trafficking, and we're talking about some people don't grasp the idea, the horror of this phenomenon. Now, can we talk about the causes in general, and then maybe talk about the Middle East and what specific causes we have in the Middle East for this phenomenon?
The phenomenon of human trafficking in the Middle East, and especially in our region, I mean Syria, Palestine, Lebanon, is huge. The crime, human trafficking is a crime, and this crime is truly abundant. You were talking with your guest in the studio about what media can do. A recent soap opera covering the story of both children and trafficked children in Lebanon was created and published on a very famous TV station, for example, in Lebanon. And it shed light about the story of those children that were bought and sold because of extreme poverty of their parents. This is why the first cause of human trafficking. The causes of human trafficking are numerous. Usually it's poverty. Second, it's usually lack of education of the parents. They need money. There are an increased impact and pressure on their economy of the household. This is why they sell their children, for example, or they sell the women. And this is why also women are trafficking in women, usually in brothels or due to for prostitution. So when we talk about human trafficking in our region, it's very, very important to see that human trafficking is very, very well implemented in our region, especially right now in Lebanon, for example, with those Syrian refugees coming in Lebanon. They are so numerous. The country is a small country where the
Doctor, this is an issue we'll discuss.
A lot of pressure.
This is an issue we'll discuss in a.
What we are witnessing.
This is an issue we'll discuss in a second segment. I would like to hold on there, especially with the Syrian refugee issue. But I would like to take from what you said and ask you this: what is the reason that the Middle East, especially the Middle East, is like a heaven land for traffickers? What is the reason?
Yes.
And for example, Lebanon is signatory for a lot of international the conventions and protecting the rights. Why is that not implemented? What is the reason?
In Lebanon, there is a law that has been ratified by by the MPs in 2010 or 2011 against human trafficking. But the problem is that our police cannot prosecute and is not always able to protect the victims of human trafficking. We need people to implement those laws. To put them in, to enforce them, we need police, we need NGOs taking care of the victims, we need the special centers and social centers to protect the victims, to protect the children, especially to protect the women, because it's well known that human trafficking touches men, women, and children. But women and children are the main the target of of traffickers.
They're the most vulnerable.
Children are bought and sold because, for example, of to remove their organs or to buy their organs or to extract their organs. Women are usually sold and bought for prostitution, for abuse, or also for what we call cheap labor. And for example, the Middle East is very well known for example, the domestic workers working in the houses and within the household. People do not talk about human trafficking, but how those domestic workers coming from, for example, Ethiopia, Madagascar, or wherever other country are coming to, for example, to Lebanon. They come via Dubai, they come via Sudan. They don't come in a direct flight. Why? Because always they are underage girls. Those girls are always between 14 and 20 years old, sometimes less. Sometimes very, very young girls come, for example. We don't talk about this. So we are seeing children being bought and sold. We are seeing women bought and sold, and especially adolescents being bought and sold. In Lebanon, with early marriages that are huge, that are now taking, we're seeing such numbers of early marriages in Lebanon. From Lebanese and from non-Lebanese living in Lebanon. That's the Syrian that you would like to talk about in this other segment. Why? We don't have people or governmental institutions putting into force the laws that have been signed and ratified, and the international conventions that have been ratified also by Lebanon. About what convention I'm talking about? The protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in person. The good thing is that now we have some international cooperation between the polices of many of the countries that are working to try to implement those laws and to try to find out the mafias that are trafficking in humans, and especially trafficking in organs.
That's another. Doctor, that's a complete different. That's a complete.
I'm selling his heart, his kidney, and this is. And I need money. Why? Because there is a lot of poverty. There is a lack of education. One of the causes of human trafficking is the lack of education in the society and the lack of empowerment in the society. People do not know what they can do to improve their livelihood. So what they do is they sell or themselves or their children or their sister and brothers.
Doctor, you gave us a lot of amount of information we need to discuss. So allow me to go to my guest, Miss Diana Hariri. Diana, we have a lot of information. We have a lot of things, but you wanted to comment on some of the things that Dr. Rita was saying.
No, actually, I wanted to comment on one thing. All the labor or helpers that we have, I don't think or categorize them as being humanly trafficked.
Okay, what the reason?
Because I think that in relation to what they get paid in their countries, they're well off, they're fine. And I don't think that people confiscate their maybe passport just because, well, they confiscate it because they're not trustworthy. But because there's a word around town.
I think there's a little thing here, because I think when you're sometimes their contracts are manipulated. Sometimes they sign for certain, they come knowing that they are.
I know.
They have certain conditions that they are not met. So I think
this is not the thing that we need to tackle. There are more important issues like cheap labor, cheap sex, etc.
I know, so. But like referring to this situation, I think sometimes, it's not always, it's not generalized, but sometimes they are being manipulated by a lot of these companies who bring them into certain countries for labor. But allow me to ask you this. I mean, it's a huge topic, and it's very difficult. It's like organ trafficking, child labor.
Absolutely. Now let me just tell you one thing. We need to prioritize. Okay. Now in Lebanon, what do you see? What is the first thing you see? You do not see prostitution on the streets, right? What you see are kids, lots of youngsters walking around in between cars, selling roses, selling candies, or I don't know, Kleenex, and that alone we should target that. We should prioritize that. And then, of course, we're talking about Beirut. I'm just trying to create a strategic plan for activists like you and I. So we start with Beirut, what do we see? And then we go north, just like in what's happening in Akkar and with the marriage to Syrian women or girls. So we need to just solve the problem, using localities, like trying to segment or cluster.
But otherwise, who are we? That's the question.
NGOs and the NGOs like.
But where does the government stand here? A government has to take responsibility.
That's why it's called an NGO, non-governmental organization.
I know, but
the government
I like this argument. I love it. But where is the government? The government should be the main.
Now the issue. The government issued the law. Okay, amended the penal code. They did what they have to do. Now the thing is, we have to look at our country again. If we want to work from Lebanon, I'm a problem solver myself. So please don't get me wrong. So if you want to take Lebanon, okay, we cannot just theorize, say things out of the blue. We have to solve things. We're an insecure country, so it's just leave the government alone. Just work on its issues, trying to create internal security. But it's our job as NGOs to just put our hands together and
to solve things.
To do something.
Now, we'll talk about this. We'll talk about solving things, but we need to take a break, our first break. We take a break, and after the break, we have a small video of testimonies of some of the people who are subjected to trafficking. After the break, stay tuned.
Beyond the lines, beyond the surface. Depth, clarity, substance. Beyond the discourse.
Beyond politics, beyond the shallowness of everyday politics.
The crisis of capitalism, the European impasse, the energy shortages, the emerging power of Asia, the economic power of the Arab world, the economic debate, informative, revealing, and progressive. It discusses the economic event of the world.
Economic debate, where the numbers reveal the truth.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now, before we go to the video, Dr. Rita, I've noticed that you had something to say. There were some comments you wanted to make about the things we were having in the studio. So I'll give you like a couple of minutes to give us your comments about what we were talking about.
Let's go back to the definition of human trafficking. Human trafficking is a crime. It's a violation of human rights. When I speak about domestic workers coming from abroad to foreign countries to work and to improve their livelihood, usually we are talking about a normal contract between a contractor and someone who needs a job. But the problem is when someone comes to a country in an illegal manner through many companies, not knowing what the contract they need to sign is, in what language it is. They don't understand the language.
Yes, human brokers.
It's confiscated. They usually work against their will for many hours. This is forced labor. What is forced labor? Forced labor is when I work against my will because of I'm under stress, or there is any kind of punishment. For example, you will not eat tonight, or please go to your room and I will lock you on your room or in the house alone. You will not have a day off. This is what we can call forced labor, when someone does not know why he's here, why he's working, and there is punishment against him. We have seen those horrible videos about laborers and domestic workers, for example, in Saudi Arabia being beaten. These videos went viral on YouTube because this is what your guest has said, dramatized by the short videos that went viral on YouTube. And when we saw this, we said, we should put a stop on this. If the king didn't do anything, we couldn't. NGOs cannot work alone. NGOs can lobby. NGOs can help with the civil society on raising awareness on certain issues, but the government, this state, should put laws and should enforce the laws and implement them.
There are the laws, but it has to be they have to be implemented. The laws are already there, but they have to be implemented. But allow me, doctor, now to go to the video that I was talking about. We have a video. We're gonna watch testimonies of people who went through the horror of human trafficking. Let's take a listen.
Je suis venue en France par une dame que mon frère me l'avait présentée pour qu'elle puisse m'aider parce que moi j'ai perdu mes parents et mon frère lui il est encore jeune, il partait encore à l'école, donc du coup il ne pouvait pas m'aider. La fille de la dame qui était venue, qui était allée en vacances, sa mère me l'a présentée pour dire voici ma fille, tout ça. Ma fille elle va t'emmener, mais tu vas garder ses enfants. En échange, elle va te mettre à l'école là-bas. Et quand on venait, j'avais 18 ans, je venais d'avoir mes 18 ans. Pendant ce temps, j'étais avec elle, je gardais ses enfants. Et elle, ce qu'elle m'avait promis, elle ne faisait pas. Parce qu'à la maison, je m'occupais des enfants, je lavais les enfants, je faisais la cuisine. Je faisais tout, quoi. Je ne sors pas parce qu'elle ne me laissait pas sortir. Elle m'interdisait de parler avec les gens, même les voisins. Elle ne me payait pas. Un jour, elle est venue, elle me dit, prépare tes affaires, on rentre à Abidjan. Je ne peux pas partir parce qu'elle m'a pas aidée. Elle va aller me mettre à Abidjan, il n'y avait personne. Pendant tous ces 3 ans, j'ai travaillé, j'ai gardé ses enfants. Tous ces 3 ans, elle n'a rien fait pour moi. Ça me fait beaucoup mal.
Je m'appelle Christina, j'ai 15 ans et je viens de Roumanie. J'habitais et après j'ai parti en Angleterre. J'étais avec mes petites sœurs et mes petits frères. Je les regardais, j'étais avec tout le temps dans la maison. Et puis, après un jour, ma mère m'a mariée. Un copain à elle, ils sont venus chez nous et il a dit pour qui je veux me marier et ça. Et moi, comme j'ai écouté ça, je pleurais, j'ai fait plein de trucs pour que je ne me marie pas avec lui. Il fait, ça c'est la décision que moi je l'ai prise et toi tu veux le faire. Mon mari, il avait 18 ans et j'avais que 13 ans et je ne savais rien faire. Il était méchant. Il ne savait même pas comment il se comporte avec une fille ou avec une fille de 15 ans, de 14 ans. Il se comportait comme une femme qui a 20 ans ou 30 ans, je ne sais pas combien. Après, j'ai parti en Roumanie. Ils ont fait mes passeports, mes trucs. Et après, j'ai allé en Espagne. Moi, je voulais, lui, il restait à la maison. Et jamais je voulais. Mais j'étais obligée parce que si je ne le faisais pas, il me frappait.
Welcome back. I mean, Ms. Diana, we saw this video. It's a horrific video that shows us a very ugly truth, the ugly truth which is there, the trafficking. And you always see the victims are the vulnerable. I mean, women, children, mostly women and children, of course men, but the most vulnerable are women and children. But the thing is, when we take this issue, and it's very, like, we have a lot of points, a lot of things we can address when it comes to this issue. But talking about, let's concentrate our talk now in this segment on the biggest thing going on in the region right now, which is the Syrian crisis, and the horrors, like, let alone the horrors of war, but I mean the reports, the stories that we hear about the trafficking of women, about children, and like you see them in Lebanon everywhere, and we hear the stories. I mean, how horrific the situation is.
I think you defined it. It's really horrific. So if I add a really or it's extra horrific, I'm not going to be doing anything. But the thing is, again, I'm not the one who describes things, but usually there's something called the categorical imperative, or putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. So had this been done to your sister, maybe your mother, I don't think you would accept it. So this is one aspect of how horrific things can be. Now, in relation to what's happening in Akkar, I think that we should show some empathy for all immigrants coming from different parts of Syria.
Those are not only immigrants, those are escaping war. They're like
yes,
refugees.
Absolutely.
So
refugees, yes, absolutely. Yes, please, thank you for correcting me. So, so these refugees, they're also culturally bound. They're expected to get married at a very early age, and sometimes I cannot label it as prostitution. You know, if they get married to an improper man, or a man who's after a limited amount of marriage just for the pleasure of it. And then maybe disposing of the spouse and going skimping from one spouse to the other. But there are lots of stories that you hear about, you know, marriage and the upsides and the downsides of marriage. I don't know how to say this, but the thing is, let us define it as in terms of human trafficking. I'd have to say that it is labeled as human trafficking, since the men are looking for a cheap way to get the halal marriage out of, yes. So I think that maybe it's, if you want to do something about it, maybe there should be a fatwa about it. I don't know. So, but I told you, I'm a problem solver.
But the reason behind, for example, the situation in Akkar is a fatwa, that like these women are like, you should protect the women because these are vulnerable women.
Well,
and
how
our
about
men
we
have to
educate
marry
them? Yeah, it's about. I told you, it's culture bound. You know, it's all about the culture, because they know that the girl at the age of 19 is supposed to get married, not supposed to get a degree. So that's why their expectations are limited to cooking, cleaning, and having babies. Had the expectations changed somehow by surrounding, you know, the surrounding influences like the dad, the brother, had they told them, go out, get an education, then here comes the role of the government, not to penalize this type of human trafficking, but to actually maybe build schools to accommodate all
But
these.
how about the
just
criminal
like-
side of this? How about the
No.
organized? How about the organized groups, the organized gangs who are taking a lot of these women and forcing them into prostitution? How about a lot of them who are taking
Well-
children and forcing them into labor? I mean,
Well-
this is a fact.
Absolutely. Now the thing is, I can't think in a criminal mind. You know, I can put myself in a criminal mind's position because mainly a criminal is evil. So, but the thing is, actually, we cannot call him evil because he's just only after one thing, the source of all evil, which is money.
Okay.
Okay. So, but the end justifies the means. Therefore, the word prostitution has lost its connotation. It becomes something normal.
But this is not by
This is how-
choice. Like those women didn't choose to become prostitutes
Actually,
in this case.
I'm just telling you how a criminal mind thinks.
Okay.
Now, as for the tools, which are actually the people getting trafficked, I think they don't have a choice. But how about we get to them and tell them that you have a choice? How will they know that they have a right to education? How will they know that, yes, there are some NGOs helping you guys? You know, because we need to reach out, not just penalizing. Penalizing is a matter of playing fox and rabbit, just like catch me if you can. That's not good. It's never good.
Okay.
Okay, so what about we just weasel our way out? Just let the NGOs get their way and solve the problem.
You're obviously a big fan of NGOs.
Well, actually, we're starting up our own
Okay.
NGOs, so
Okay.
that's
So,
why.
Okay.
It's
Now
not-
allow me now to go to Dr. Rita Chemaly. Dr. Rita, I'm going to ask you about a different issue here regarding also Syrian refugees. I mean, we hear these stories of Syrian refugees trying to get to the promised land, Europe, through illegal ways, through these through like boats, like from Turkey, from Egypt, and the problem is. Europe has closed its border clearly, and Europe clearly doesn't care anymore, and they just took very little amount of refugees. I mean, it's disgraceful if you look at countries like Norway or Sweden is the only country that is doing a relatively good job. But don't you think that Europe, by closing its borders and making it impossible for any refugee to get into the country, is actually paving the way and making the trafficking job easier for traffickers?
Of course. Usually when we close our borders, will increase the crime because traffickers will get more way to try to find out easy ways and cheap ways to get more to trade more with human people. What happens, for example, with Switzerland, that has recently also passed a law closing its border for immigrants from Europe only, not just from the Middle East. We have witnessed yesterday not just Syrian protests to go abroad, but even Palestinians, refugees in Lebanon asking to go abroad because in Lebanon, for example, they cannot find jobs, proper jobs for their children, or future for their children. What you are discussing right now, just after the short movie we watched, is very important, Shant, and we can just highlight that even in Europe, like you have just witnessed in the short movie, even children are trafficked. We have to shed light that it's not just a problem that is for the Middle East. We know that, for example, in the United States of America, the trafficking in human mafia are working in an improper way, and there are billions being created and generated by the human trafficking. This is a worldwide problem and a worldwide crime that everybody should stop. How? By first raising awareness through civil society and NGOs, but what is important is that to let institutions, I mean legal institutions and governmental institutions, to do their job right. How? We can help them in, for example, creating schools for the children, for the women, to decrease the illiteracy rate and to increase education. That is the first thing to do, to create safe space for the abused victims.
Absolutely.
Also, we don't have safe space for those women and children that sometimes escape from human trafficking. sometimes they come back to their parents in a certain, in a health, that their health is so, their social health, their psychological health is so down, and even their physical health, especially if they have some organs that have been extracted. So we have to consider all those things and put a national strategy to stop human trafficking. I have a good news for you, Shant, and tomorrow, for example, in Lebanon, we will launch a national campaign. When I say national, it means a campaign that helps, where NGOs, governments, institutions, ministries, and international organizations are working together to, for example, in Lebanon, to prevent child marriage. This is for you. A national campaign will launch tomorrow. Yes, in Lebanon, and the National Commission for Lebanese Women has created this national campaign in cooperation with LAU and the Institute for Women's Studies in Lebanon to prevent child marriages in Lebanon. Why? Because we have witnessed those horrible numbers of women and of girls, I mean, young, underage girls under 18 years old getting married, especially in the Syrian community and in the Palestinian community, and also in the Lebanese community, even though we don't like to say it out loud. Although in the Lebanese community, especially because of the war and the conflict that we lived in. So what to do? First, we want to lobby to raise awareness. We have created short movies, but not only, we need to create safe space, we need to implement the laws that exist, and if there is no law, we have to write draft laws and push forward for their ratification and enforcement.
Okay, Ms. Diana, there's a small interesting comment I was reading. I would like to read to you and have your opinion about, which is the challenge in combating human trafficking, especially in the Middle East, is that the governments deny there's a problem. Not just the governments, I'm going to take it another step also. It's like there's a general sentiment of denial in the Middle Eastern societies. That, for example, what's happening here is trafficking. No, this is okay. No, this is not okay. Do you agree with this comment?
There obviously is a problem, and their denial is obsolete. So what is it exactly that you want me to say? Just when somebody's in denial, I think that they might be subject to some psychotherapy.
But so this comes the role of the shock element. Like this comes the role of the media campaigns that you and Dr. Rita was talking about here, to uplift people and just to show them like they come out of their denial and just reality check people. We have a big problem.
Well, actually, I don't think that they're in denial more than they don't care.
Okay.
They just their family's fine, everybody around them is fine, so they don't have the activist spirit.
I think there's another problem here because the situation economically, and we come here to the problem of poverty, is so deep that people don't have time and they don't have the will to
each man for himself.
Exactly. Now I'm gonna go with both of you to the final segment, which is bullet points that I'm gonna take your comment upon. Now I'm gonna take the first bullet point, which is there are an estimated 27 million slaves in the world today. That's the highest recorded numbers of slaves in history. We're talking about 27 million slaves, Ms. Diana. Like, what can you say about this number?
We're still in the age of slavery.
I mean,
I guess.
Exactly. When you're talking about 27 million slaves, including every element of slavery you can think about, of course.
Can you define slavery for me?
Slavery, Dr. Rita. How can we define slavery?
Slavery means when someone works.
I know what slavery is. It's a rhetorical question.
Yes. So first, we have this modern form of slavery that exists right now with early marriages. Young girls, like 18 years, like 12 years old, are getting married with people that are twice their age. First, they get abused by their husband. First, they get abused by their in-laws. They don't even know that they will one day get pregnant. This is what we call human trafficking. It means when, for example, people are creating these networks of traffickers of young brides. in Lebanon, Syria, Turkey. We have to notify that this is a regional and worldwide problem, not even regional. What we are hearing here in our country are the regional problem and the regional stories, the stories of Alia, the stories of those young girls that are getting married against their will, sometimes with their will. When my age is 12 years old and someone is going to tell me you will be a bride for one day, I will say yes. I will be the doll for one day, but I will not understand that there are responsibilities for this fake marriage that I'm doing. That I will not know if one day my husband might turn his back on me and will go and I will be pregnant, and this will also increase my child mortality, and I may contract HIV. Though all those questions all those observations means modern slavery. All those observations, when I speak about domestic workers in our region, this is modern slavery. When I speak about prostitution and sexual prostitution against the will of so many people, this is modern slavery. This is why the numbers are so high. And why some governments do not do anything.
That's another case. That's another case, doctor. That's another case. We're not going to go there. I'm going to go to the second bullet point here, which is, according to estimates, now approximately 80% of trafficking involves sexual exploitation and 19% involves labor exploitation. The average age of a young woman being trafficked is 12 to 14 years old. Ms. Diana, we go to the thing we were talking off air, which is like these numbers. You're talking about 80% involves sexual exploitation, while 19% involves like labor and forced labor. So the incentive, I mean, there's a big problem here.
The key word is pleasure, dear.
And the key word is, but it's not only that, it's pleasure on the expense of innocent children.
Yeah.
And that is the big problem here.
The point is, why were the numbers in that proportion? It's normal. We live in a man's world, as you can say. So, and again, we have to go to empowering women. Yeah. That's another segment.
That's another.
Exactly. That's another thing. But it's under human rights, I assure you. Now we have the issue of 80%, you said, for women being trafficked.
Not just women, they're children. They're 12 to 14-year-old. I meant the 80% is involved in sexual exploitation.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's related to a man's world plus free
and cheap. We're talking about cheap sex.
Exactly.
But at
equals high number, and then you have the kids again. Because now have you heard of the amendment that they did in the U.S. I think it's 2011 April, maybe 20th of April.
Okay.
The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission issued the biggest scandal where they imported 200 illegal Thai workers. They're working for free. They're living in poor conditions, squalor and bad conditions. Now, in regards to that, that's labor. I think that they can afford cheap labor from non-minor kids, not kids from the ages of 12 to 14. So I think that's why the proportions like that. So I guess women against children versus labor,
which is still exploitation.
Which is still exploitation, but we're not talking about child labor. Now, child labor here comes under the title maybe organized crime, as in groups of kids going around the streets, selling stuff, stealing, pickpocketing. I don't know. So this might be. I think the studies might be just a little bit general. So if you go deeper, into it, you'll find that they'll segment it.
Details, but these are general estimates.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go to the third bullet point now, which is an estimated 13 million children. 13 million are enslaved around the world today, accounting for nearly half of the trafficking victims in the world. Dr. Rita, I would like to take your comment on this. We're talking about 13 million children. Half of these trafficking, slavery numbers, are children, the most vulnerable ones. How can we stop this?
Yes, because children are very vulnerable first. We didn't talk about recruitment of children as young soldiers also in our conflicts and in our so many conflicts. And this is one kind and one form of human trafficking also, the recruitment of children soldiers, the early marriages that touches children, and the fact that, for example, the international treaties related to children are not enforced and are not implemented in so many countries.
Okay, now I'm going to go to the fourth bullet point here, which is trafficked children are significantly more likely to develop mental health problems, abuse substances, engage in prostitution as adults, and either commit or be victimized by violent crimes later in life. I mean, Ms. Diana, we're talking about a whole generation, the youngsters of certain society or different countries being abused, having mental or like even psychological problems, and you're creating, or at one point in the future, there will be a corrupt generation. When I say corrupt,
dysfunctional.
I mean dysfunctional because of this phenomenon. Like, don't you think there has to be a solution, especially for children? It has to be, of course, but what is it? What can we do when it comes to children?
Now, actually, the better question is, why do children go to school? That's the question that comes to my mind, because schools create discipline, create self-awareness. They're just the way to go they're just defining the future.
If you cannot afford school?
Now that's for normal kids, that's what I'm saying. I can't say normal and abnormal, but let's say for normal kids. Now what about children that are being trafficked? So having psychological issues and non-disciplinary actions is normal. Okay. Now the thing is just we need to contain the problem. So again, I'm a problem solver, so you're right, absolutely right. Yes, children being trafficked, they do have psychological problems because they're brought up in bad conditions, they're abused, they're subject to abuse of drugs, and maybe they perceive the world differently. They're just insecure. When you're insecure, nothing's good up there. Nothing's stable.
But
you'll get lots
you're
of...
talking about like solving the problem.
Yeah, I just think solving, I don't know why.
Oh, okay. Now allow me to go to the final point, and we're very short on time, so I'm going to ask for little comments from both of you. Human trafficking has been identified as the largest human rights violation in the history of mankind. Now, Dr. Rita, in 1 minute, please. I'm not going to take your comment on this. This is a very horrific violation of human rights law, but what has to be done? What are the future steps that should be made from governments, NGOs, so we can make at least some progress in solving this issue?
We need a collaboration, a true collaboration between all the components of the state. I mean, the government, the police, the legal institution, the legal system, the parliamentary, and the civil society, of course, and the media, to raise awareness, to lobby against the human trafficking, the crime, and to implement international relations and conventions and protocols to stop this huge crime against mankind.
Okay. Ms. Diana, I'll have your comment on this. Yeah, exactly. That was great. Thank you. I'll have your final comment on this also. Future steps. How can we solve this issue? Since you're a solver, what steps should be done?
First of all, we should work with what we have. Start with what you have, and then go outside. So, because I'm Lebanese, proud to be one, I'd start with Lebanon. Because I'm from Beirut, I'll start from Beirut.
Okay.
And if someone here is from Saida, maybe we'll start from Saida.
So you're talking about containing the problem, taking each city by itself.
Absolutely. Because believe me, when you want to solve a problem, it takes more than one meeting. It takes more than one mind. It takes more than one action. We should all have our hands together. We should all think, because problem solving is not an easy thing.
I know.
You have to accept other people's opinions.
Okay, I just have to interrupt you. Like, I'm going to end this, but I still believe that the government has to play the bigger role and it has the biggest responsibility.
Well, if our government is, I can't say our.
Yeah,
if,
in general,
if
I'm talking about governments
are
in
non-functional, we have to be resourceful.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Ms. Dana Hariri, for being here. Also, Dr. Rita, thank you very much for your passionate participation in the show. Ladies and gentlemen, this was our tackling the case of human trafficking, a horrific case that has to be solved in the future with our all efforts, collaborate efforts, government, NGOs, and me and you and everyone. See you next week. Bye-bye.